How to repair your air hydraulic jacking beam. If you need to change the complete pump, start by removing the oil hoses. Then remove the nut on the release. Next step is to remove the 2 screws on the bottom frame. It is now possible to remove the pump and disconnect the air hose on the air motor. Fix the pump block in a vise and remove the sound absorber. Observe the exact position of the air motor before you remove it and remember the correct position for refitting. Remove the packing box. Remove the seals in the packing box and pump block. Clean with detergent and check the parts for scratches and marks. Refit new seals in the packing box. Make sure they are positioned correctly before you refit them. Clean the pump block with a detergent. Refit a new seal before refitting the packing box. Use plenty of grease on both. Remove the piston from the air cylinder and clean it. Clean the piston and check for scratches and marks. Make sure that the seals on the air piston are intact. Lubricate with grease and refit the piston and spring. Refit the air motor on the pump block. Take care you position the air motor correctly. It can be fastened tighter, but it has to be placed like this. Refit the sound absorber and make sure all parts are clean and dry. Refit the air hose on the air motor. Guide the release lever onto the release and refit the nut without tightening it. Refit the 2 screws on the bottom frame. Refit the oil hoses. Finally, adjust the release to make sure it has a 1 to 2 mm play. If you need to repair the cylinder, start by removing the 2 screws on the top beam, one on each side. Lift the top beam and remove the 2 axles. It is now possible to pull the top beam a bit to the left. Remove the top beam rollers. Lift the top beam off the jack. The next step is to remove the 3 screws for the front panel. Remove the screw securing the base support arm on the right side. Remove the base support arm. Lift the safety stop and lower the scissors completely. Remove the hydraulic hose and the oil hose from the reservoir. Pull the air hose for the oil reservoir from the quick coupling. Remove the locking ring on the front axle. Push out the front axle. Lift the entire scissor unit out from the right side of the jack. Turn over the scissors and remove the locking rings on the side. Remove the outer scissor arm. Remove the circlip on the curve and lift the curve above the cylinder bearing. Remove the cylinder from the scissor unit. Fix the cylinder in a vise. Remove the piston rod. Remove the old seals on the cylinder. Clean the parts and check for scratches and rust. Replace the cylinder, complete if needed. Refit new O-ring, backup ring and scraper. Note that the yellow backup ring is bowl-shaped, so it fits with the O-ring. Make sure to position it correctly. Fix the piston rod in a vise. Mark the position of the valve disc before you remove it. Remove the locking ring on the valve disc and then remove the ball and compression spring. Clean the disc and remove the O-ring as well. Make sure the valve disc is clean and dry before you refit new ball, compression spring and locking ring. replace the O-ring. Use plenty of grease and refit the valve disc on the piston rod. Please notice that there is a 0.6mm hole in one of the 6mm holes. Mark this 0.6mm hole. Turn the valve disc home and then back until the marked 0.6mm hole is positioned as shown, 90 degrees to the right of the hose connection. This is necessary to bleed the cylinder properly. Observe the position of the bleeding screw on top of the cylinder before you fix the cylinder in the vise. Mount the piston rod with the fitting on top. When following this procedure, the bleeding screw and the valve disc will be positioned correctly relative to each other for bleeding the system. When the jacking beam is ready for reassembly, start by refitting the cylinder into the scissor unit. Use plenty of grease on all bearings and axles. Push the curve down and refit the circlip. Use plenty of grease before you refit the outer scissor arm and the two circlips. Turn the scissors over. Clean the rollers. Clean the roller axles and use plenty of grease on both axles and rollers before you refit them. Make sure the rollers run smoothly. Make sure the release is unobstructed before you refit the scissor unit into the jack. Use plenty of grease before refitting the axle. Check and grease the air valve before refitting the 3 screws securing the front panel. Refit the oil hose and the hydraulic hose. Make sure to push the air hose for the oil reservoir fully into the quick coupling. Refit the circlip. Lift the top beam in place and then grease and refit the rollers. push the top beam home. Lubricate the 2 short axles and refit them. Refit the screws that hold them in place. Raise the jack to max lifting height. Be aware that the top beam is not supported by the cylinder when raised like this. Refit the base support arm on the right side. Use plenty of grease and refit the top screw. Refill the oil reservoir using good hydraulic oil with viscosity ISO VG15. Correct oil level is to the lower edge of the hole. Raise the jack to max lifting height. Loosen the pivot screw on the top of the cylinder half a turn. Tighten the screw when only pure oil without bubbles emerges.